Hello, everyone. My name is Fernando, and today I will be talking about the transatlantic slave trade. The transatlantic slave trade transported millions of enslaved Africans from the Old World to the New World. When these enslaved Africans arrived in the New World primarily through ships, they were put to work in a variety of different ways. The enslaved Africans faced various processes of enslavement, and contrary to public consciousness, slaves did not solely work in the agricultural sector, namely on plantations. I believe that this public consciousness is very active in America because of the limited knowledge given to students in school. The various processes of enslavement are an interesting topic that can shed light on the reader about the complex and often tragic nature of slavery. The processes of enslavement could vary widely depending on the region where enslaved people were transported to by the Atlantic slave trade. I have a quote that comes from Christopher Nora, and it goes, "The Chesapeake and Carolina Low Countries Low Country colonies were significant plantation societies, though ports did have a thriving business with the Sugar Islands in the British Caribbean." This quote clearly displays just a small fraction of the various processes of enslavement that occurred in both North and South America, but this quote still does a good job of highlighting some of the processes of enslavement and how they varied between regions. This is important because the quote, along with my explanation, demonstrates that there's more to be known about the Atlantic slave trade. It may seem unimportant or even boring to the reader, but by letting the reader know that there's so much more to learn about enslavement in North and South America, it may interest them. One last example that shows the processes of enslavement could vary depending on the region is evident again in the fact that slaves in Peru labored in different roles depending on where they were. And this comes from week 15, Wednesday lecture, slide 14. In our modern world, slavery is a relic of the past, but the legacy that it has left behind in certain countries still deprives people of African descent of basic civil rights. Afro-descendant. I have a quote that comes from Juliet Hooker, and it goes, "Afro-descendants certainly deserve to have a decent standard of living and adequate political representation and are not even entitled to communal land rights." As I mentioned previously, this quote comes from an article by Juliet Hooker, and the article speaks about Afro-descended people who still struggle for rights in Latin America. This quote may seem awkwardly included, but since there are no other articles that can come close to my topic, this was the best choice. Anyway, this quote still bears some relevance to my topic because slavery and its various processes still affect people and nations even today. All of this is important because it demonstrates to the reader the mark that slavery and its various processes have left on our world. The reader may still shrug at this, but this topic is important because it is a very interesting topic that can enlighten the reader about why things are the way they are. This next fact may also seem like an awkward inclusion, but it still bears some relevance to the point expressed in this paragraph. Manumission freed slaves, but it ironically often left former slaves in a worse situation, and manumission's effects are still felt by Afro descendants today. And this comes from week 13, Wednesday lecture, slides 16, 17, and 19. To conclude, the processes of enslavement is a fascinating topic, and although I've delved in a great amount of research, I've barely scratched the surface of what could be hours upon hours of research into this complicated, albeit fascinating topic. We can learn so much about the world around us and understand why certain things are the way they are if we dive into this topic. Throughout this paper, there's so much information provided about the Atlantic slave trade and how it operated in North and South America. I've also touched on the various processes of enslavement and how they varied from region to region and how complex of a subject that is. I hope that this paper intrigues your interest in the often neglected subject of Atlantic slavery and the impact it has left on our world. That will be all. Thank you.